Oh yeah, there we go. Hello everybody. How you doing? Jim here. Welcome back for some more games. Oh, what a glorious day. Yes, I got some more games. So we're going to talk about them. We're going to have a good time. We're going to take a look at some awesome Dreamcast games today. And that's just, well, what can you say about that? It's a good day if there's Dreamcast games involved. Yeah. Been away for just a teensy bit. You know, doing stuff, living life, that kind of thing. Not really, just busy with clerical work mostly. But here I am, I'm back. Good old couch, good old bubble mug. It's coffee time. Having me some cafe au lait today. Which is pretty good. Kind of like my new favorite, my new go-to coffee. I know some people, you know, they like their coffee black and strong as hell. I like to, you know, get some sugar in it, get some milk in there, get some other various things in there. Really cut the flavor of that coffee. I don't know. Sometimes if it's especially early in the morning and I really need that pick-me-up, maybe some more, you know, harsh coffee will do me just fine, an espresso or something. But if I'm just gonna drink coffee for pleasure, I want it to taste good, damn you. Will not be shamed for my coffee practices. Anyway, yeah, like I said, looky here. Got us half a dozen Dreamcast games, a lot of jelly in these donuts. Yeah, so I pick up, like, you know, a ton of games every month. Most of them I end up shipping out in the mail, and I do stuff by request, and probably my two most commonly requested consoles are Sega Saturn and Sega Dreamcast. What can you say? Retro gamers, they just love their Sega, and I do too. So I get to pick up all these Dreamcast games, and some of them I hang on to for quite a while. Some of these are kind of collector's items, really. Not cheap games at all, but lots of fun, all of them. So let's go ahead, dive right in, take a look. We're going to come right off the top. Heavy hitter, right away. This is the amazing Zero Gunner 2. And Zero Gunner 2, one of my favorite shoot-'em-ups on the Dreamcast. High in the running for my favorite, actually. It is developed by Akikyo. Akikyo has developed a lot of my favorite shooters, including like the Strikers 1945 series, or Gunbird, Sengoku Blade, stuff like that. And they put out some pretty damn good shooters on the Dreamcast. Zero Gunner 2, probably the best one they put on the Dreamcast. You get to play as helicopters in this one, so that's fun, right? Instead of just playing as like jets or spaceships or something, you get to play as some good old whirlybirds, some helicopters. Get to live out some fantasies of being Jan Michael Vincent, maybe, flying around in your attack helicopter. What's kind of cool about this game, or what's really cool about this game, is it's a top-down shooter, but you can move in a full 360 degrees because you're in a helicopter, and that's what they do, right? They move around in a 360-degree range of motion, so enemies come from all sides of the screen, and you can change your direction whenever you want on the fly, blow stuff up, and that's pretty cool. That's kind of like an interesting little twist on top of what was already probably going to be just like a solid top-down shooter. Because again, Akikyo, 1945, they know how to make a top-down shooter, but the little twist there, that makes it a lot more fun, because you got to be on your toes, you got to watch out for those enemies wherever the hell they're coming from. But you get three helicopters to choose from, and they're like Apache and Holcomb and something else, but they're like fictionalized, kind of futuristic versions of them. So they shoot like lasers and like super missiles and all kinds of stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. The way this game handles its super bombs is also pretty cool. You have more of a, I guess, kind of like a power meter to the side of the screen that fills up as you collect energy crystals that enemies leave behind after you blow them up. So the more you collect of those, the more energy you accumulate, and then you can stock up a whole bunch of super attacks. And they do lots of damage. They, you know, damage everything on screen, or they can just do a lot of damage to like a boss. They're big, huge boss machines in this game. Again, if you played a Akikyo game, you know that their boss, I want to say monsters, but usually it's some kind of like giant tank or airplane or a mech suit or something like that. They're always pretty cool. So yeah, Zero Gunner 2, super solid gameplay, really fun. Lots of difficulty settings to choose from. Again, typical of Tkyo, there are like 8 or 9 different difficulty settings. The first handful of stages are in random order. The second half of the game you play in order. The difficulty ramps up as you go along. 3 helicopters to choose from. They all have their different weapons and sub-weapons and super attacks and things like that. Graphics are really nice in this game. I would say the soundtrack is probably where it falls the flattest. The soundtrack is not as awesome as games like Strikers or Gunbird, something to that effect. So, you know, the soundtrack not so great. The sound effects are really great. Lots of cool like explosions and sound effects and things. So yeah, I would say the weakest part of Zero Gunner 2 is the soundtrack, but the graphics are nice. The gameplay is really fun. It's challenging. It's awesome. 2 players. Kind of an expensive game these days, which is another drawback, but again, a game that, you know, you're gonna have a lot of fun with. If you like shoot 'em ups, at least, you're gonna have a lot of fun with this one. But I'm happy to have it in the collection, at least for the time being. It is Zero Gunner 2, and it's pretty damn cool. Next up, another shoot 'em up. Another one of my favorites for the Dreamcast, which you could say about pretty much any Dreamcast shooter. They're all so good that any of them could potentially be your favorite. This one, though, published by Capcom, a lot of fun. This one is Mars Matrix. And Mars Matrix, gameplay-wise, let's see. Well, it's a top-down shooter, kind of bullet hell, I guess. I think the closest comparison you could make would be maybe Giga Wing, just because it's another Capcom shooter. It's another one that's like a bullet hell style shooter, and your kind of like super bomb shield thing in this game is very similar to the reflector force in Giga Wing. Difference here, though, as you're playing this game, when you first start, the options are kind of limited in terms of the difficulty settings and other various tweaks to the gameplay you can do. Because as you destroy enemies in this game, they drop what is essentially money. So the more of that you collect, you can then go into like an extras mode and unlock like new difficulty settings. You can unlock like you can accumulate more lives and continues as you go along. Things like that. So when you first start playing this game, you might not be able to finish it in one sitting because it is pretty tough. But as you play and you collect money and you get better, you can start spending that money on more lives and continues and other various perks and upgrades, and then you're ready to take on this game from start to finish. 1cc, no death run! Or maybe not. If you're like me, maybe not. I did eventually become pretty damn good at this game, though. I've been playing this, I think the first time I had a copy of Mars Matrix was in like 2010, and I've played it off and on since then, so I've gotten not too bad at it. But you have 2 ships to choose from. As is typical, they have different shot types. So one is, you know, a little more maneuverable with a narrow shot. The other one a little slower, but with a wider spread. It's got a good spread. So take your pick. They're both good. But yeah, solid, fun, bullet hell style gameplay. Again, similar in many regards to Giga Wing. Nice graphics, good soundtrack. It's got kind of like the high energy techno kind of electronic sound that was super popular late 90s, early 2000s. And again, one by Capcom, which, I don't know, I wonder, did they develop this or maybe someone else developed it? Supported by Takumi Corporation. So I'm guessing Takumi developed it and Capcom published it, because it doesn't really have the feel of like a Capcom game. But anyway, Mars Matrix, really great game. Awesome gameplay, great graphics, great sound design. Nothing at all to complain about, except for the fact that this one, too, like many of these shooters on the Dreamcast, is a little bit expensive these days. So keep that in mind. But if you're a high roller and you have a love for shoot 'em ups, especially on the Dreamcast, this is one of the best. Mars Matrix. So good, so fun, so fresh, so clean. Another Capcom shoot 'em up. This one, I think the last time I did a Dreamcast pickups video, I talked about the original Giga Wing, and I talked about how I prefer that over the sequel, which is true, but I do still like the sequel, which we have right here. This is Giga Wing 2. And why do I prefer the original over Giga Wing 2? I said this before, I think. The original feels like just a really great, solid shoot 'em up, and then the Reflector Force ability, which allows you to kind of like cancel out bullets and then convert things into points and then deal a bunch of damage to enemies. That felt like a cool ability tacked on to what was already just a solid playing shoot 'em up. Giga Wing 2 goes so over the top with its bullet helliness that the Reflector Force seems like it's not a it's not just a feature, like it's essential. Like you have to use it. It feels like almost constantly. Like you're constantly looking at your power meter, so you can use your Reflector Force again and again and again. Because again, the bullet hellness here is maniacal. It's insane. The scores you can rack up are crazy. I think they're like in the trillions or hundreds of trillions or something. It's just an insane game. So I get it in that regard, that it was like, okay, let's go completely balls to the wall, over the top with this one. Just insane, bullet hell, you know, wacky scores like to the max. And, you know, that's fine. Everything is still a very fun game. It's just I prefer shooter first and then gimmick second. And this one feels like it's like the gimmick, the shooter, they're sharing the stage. You have 4 ships to choose from, I believe. 4 or 5. And again, they're all very different. They handle differently. They have different shot pattern, like the spread of their shot, or if it's more narrow, what have you. And they also have super bombs as well. So in addition to your Reflector Force ability, you have super bombs, which deal a lot of damage and can clear bullets from the screen. So that's nice. So you have a lot of stuff to fall back on. You've got your Reflector Force, you've got your super bombs, and then you've got your wits. That's what you get in this game. But again, super crazy with the bullet helliness, super crazy with the scores. That's just insane stuff. It is a 4-player shooter though, so that's pretty cool. I've never played this game with 3 other people. That would be interesting. That would be very interesting. Again, I think that's just one of the ways where they're like, all right, let's just throw everything at this game. Insane bullet hell, ridiculous scores, 4 players. Let's just make this a shoot 'em up for absolute maniacs. And that is what they did. So it is still fun. I stand by that I prefer the original over this one. But this one is still a very fun game, a very fun shoot 'em up, but it has to be one that I'm kind of like in the mood for. I gotta be in the mood for that, just like that nutso, you know, experience, the blinding colors, the constant flashing and everything. But gameplay is fun. The graphics are pretty good too. Not, you know, it's a lot more 3D rendered stuff, so again, I don't like it quite as much as the 2D look of the original game, but still a nice looking game here. The soundtrack though is not that great. Again, the original one had a much better soundtrack. The soundtrack here to me is kind of boring. So not so great on the sound design aspect. The graphics nice, but still not quite as good. And the gameplay, a lot of fun, but again, still not as good. Which is interesting because Giga Wing 2, even though I don't prefer it over the first one, this is the more expensive of the 2 games. But if you ask me, go with the original. But if you can go with both, do it, because they're both fun games indeed. That is Giga Wing 2. Dreamcast, can't go wrong. It's got to be seen. And with that, I'm going to sip some of this coffee. We will take a quick break and we'll be right back. So check this out.
またドリームキャストか。
インターネットで就職情報見てんの。
真面目に働いて面倒見てくれんだよな。
私家出るよ。
ドリームキャストでインターネット安くて簡単。
仕送りよろしく。Dreamcast!
All right, and we are back like a vertebrae. And we got 3 more awesome Dreamcast games to take a look at. Aren't we lucky today? First up, game by SNK. Actually, I think produced by ADK, but they kind of go hand in hand. I've talked about this game before and how just like crazy fun it is. I have the Dreamcast version here. It does also have a Sega Saturn version, and I believe you could get it on one of the Neo Geo consoles. Maybe not CD, maybe like AES. I can't quite remember. But the Dreamcast version is the one that I have and have had numerous times. This game is just incredibly fun. It is Twinkle Star Sprites. And on the back it says, let's shoot! Twinkle Star Sprites. This is very interesting game. So it's like a versus shoot 'em up, but it's framed like a puzzle game. So if you were to just look at it, it has a similar split screen style that you would see maybe in like a Puyo Puyo game. But instead of stacking puzzle pieces, you're blowing away enemies as they come onto the screen. And it's you versus another person. Obviously, the first person to die basically is the loser, and the winner is the person who does not die. Some kind of allegory for like what? If you die, you lose. If you don't die, then you could say that you didn't lose, but you will die later on, probably. But kind of like the fun twist of this game is that it is a versus shooter. So as you're shooting down enemies on your side of the screen, when they die, they kind of like pop. They explode like a little firework, and they can cause the enemies around them to explode as well. So you can chain them together. So the more enemies you can chain together, so I guess you have to be a little strategic, like maybe shooting enemies in the middle of a cluster or something like that. But if you can do big chains of enemies being destroyed, you can send them over to your opponent's side. You can create more chaos for your opponent by chaining together as many enemies as possible. You can even do kind of like super attacks where you send a boss character over to their side, which is pretty cool too. So the whole purpose of this game is to chain together as many enemies destroyed as possible, create as much chaos as you can for your opponent as possible, while they're trying to do the same to you. And then eventually one of you just runs out of space or something, or there's just too many enemies to deal with, and then they're gone, and then we're left with a winner, and you move on. So there is like a puzzle element to this game, I suppose, because I've heard people, say something to the effect of like, it's like a puzzle game mixed with a shoot 'em up. Honestly, this game is like 90% shoot 'em up, with the only puzzle element really is that you can chain together enemies, and then that gives you more attack strength when you're sending them over to your opponent's side. But other than that, and the fact that it kind of looks like Puyo Puyo in like its design, like the split screen thing, there's not a lot of puzzle elements to it. Even the back of the case describes this as an action shooting game, which I think is more apt. I would just say it's a versus shooter, which itself is a kind of a novel concept. I don't think I've ever seen another game like this before or since. Twinkle Star Sprites, very unique. So it's a lot of fun, especially if you're playing 2 players and get pretty crazy. And or if you're playing single player, just pump the difficulty up a little bit, and it'll get nuts pretty damn quick. But you have a lot of characters to choose from. They have different shots and different boss character things they can send over, and you can do bombs to clear your screen and everything else. So that's really cool. So it's really fun, very addictive game. Great graphics, like super colorful. Again, like a Puyo Puyo or something. It's like a bag of Skittles got spilled into a Dreamcast. So great colorful graphics, really cute character designs. They kind of remind me of something like Magical Drop or something like that. Something you might have seen by like Data East. Again, very puzzle gamey looking characters and things. And a great soundtrack as well, like fun, poppy, upbeat soundtrack to match the visuals and the crazy gameplay and everything. So this, again, super fun, great game. One of the, like, if I was going to be recommending like Japan exclusive Dreamcast games, Twinkle Star Sprites would definitely be in there. It's a lot of fun. Again, you can get it on the Saturn, get it on the Dreamcast, get it on something Neo Geo, I'm sure. Another game that's going up in price steadily over like the past decade or so. But a fun game nonetheless. If you are a Dreamcast collector and you can spare the cash on this one, I would say go for it, because this game is amazing. It's incredibly fun and addictive. It is Twinkle Star Sprites, and I love it. I love it. Did I mention I love that game? It's awesome. 2 more to go. Both Capcom games, both fighting games. So we're in for a treat, because Capcom fighters on the Dreamcast, there's literally not a bad one. They're all amazing. And this one right off the top, one of the best if you ask me, which there's some stiff competition there. There's Project Justice, there's Plasma Sword, There's Third Strike and Street Fighter Alpha 3 and various other things. Capcom really did the Dreamcast justice. But what do we have here? It's none other than perfect for October. It is Vampire Chronicle for matching service. And what is Vampire Chronicle for matching service, you might ask? I hear you asking, oh dear audience member. So basically, if you can recall, it was Hyper Street Fighter 2. It was like the anniversary edition where when you choose your character, you can choose the various play styles of original Street Fighter 2 all the way up to Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo and everything in between. Same thing with Vampire Chronicle. So it's all of the characters, background, stages, music, everything. It's essentially Darkstalkers 3. But when you choose your character, you have the choice of playing Vampire mode, Hunter mode, or Savior mode. And what that means is you can use the playstyle of the original Darkstalkers or Darkstalkers 2, which was Vampire Hunter, the Night Warriors, I believe, or Darkstalkers 3, aka Vampire Savior. And that changes your character's attacks. It changes their super combo meter and what you can do with it, the various special attacks and super combos you have access to. So for example, if you're playing in Vampire mode, that game for the most part, your super attacks were just, like EX versions of your regular attacks. And they deal, a ton of damage. So you'll be playing kind of like that. So instead of pulling off like trickier super combos, you can just do like a more powerful fireball or a more powerful Shoryuken attack. Whereas if you're playing Vampire Savior mode, there's I forget the names for everything, but you can sort of like switch dimensions where you get like your special ability, and then you have your super combo attacks and all that kind of stuff too, and your EX moves. Honestly, like all the perks are there playing in Vampire Savior mode. But if you want to, you can play Vampire or Hunter mode. Those are cool too. Everything else, it's just like Darkstalkers 3. Same characters, which is a big roster of characters. So that's nice. Same stages, same soundtrack, which suits me just fine. Because the visuals of Darkstalkers 3, the soundtrack, the roster, it's my favorite in the series. But I guess this would have to technically be my favorite since it is Darkstalkers 3, just with like more options. And as it says, it's for matching service. So at the time, at least, it was an online fighting game. So you go and test your Darkstalker skills against other various people online. Not anymore, obviously, but it is pretty cool. So you have various gameplay options and other stuff like that. That's nice. So if you are indeed a Darkstalkers fan, a fighting game fan in general, really, you got a Dreamcast, this is one I'd recommend picking up. It's still not too terribly expensive when you consider like how Dreamcast prices have been going up in recent years. I would say this game probably at most is like a $30 game, maybe as much as $40, depending on the condition you find it in. The one I have here is not in especially good condition at all, which is fine. That's why I paid like 20 bucks for it. The case is all cracked and stuff, but I'm actually hanging on to this one because I want to play some Darkstalkers. But anyway, yeah. If you get a chance, pick this one up. It's great. Again, Darkstalkers 3, but with a whole bunch of cool extra features, and that makes it a great game in my book. It is Vampire Chronicle for matching service. Amazing game. And last but not least, I said we have one more Capcom fighter, one of the more obscure. When you think Capcom fighters, you think obviously Street Fighter, maybe to a lesser extent, maybe your Capcom versus SNK, Rival Schools, something. But what about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? What an interesting fighting game from Capcom, really out of left field. I remember the first time seeing this game way back in the day. It could have been more like 99, 2000, I guess. Seeing this and saying, what the hell is this? Because at the time, obviously I knew Capcom for Street Fighter and Darkstalkers and Rival Schools, and I had, at the time, I don't think I'd ever read the JoJo manga or seen any anime or anything like that, so I didn't know what the hell it was. But I saw this fighting game with these really kind of like an odd looking collection of characters, And then the gameplay seemed odd as well. It didn't look like your typical 2D fighter. It looked like there was more stuff going on. And indeed there is. If you know anything about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, you know that the characters, it's a very character-driven series, and especially this, I believe this is the 3rd series, the one headed by Jotaro Kujo. And so the character designs are very, how do you describe the character designs of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? They're very stylish, they're very cool, and the characters are unique from one another. There's not a lot here that kind of like runs together, and they have, most of them have their stands. So as you're playing in this game, because it plays in many ways like a typical 2D fighter, the controls are not going to befuddle you. You'll have your super attacks and special attacks and 6-button fighting and everything kind of like you would expect from a Capcom fighter, but each character has a variety of very cool special abilities that are vary across the characters. Some of them will use their stands, which are kind of like almost like personas that can come out and give them access to more abilities and special attacks and super attacks. That's very cool. Some of them don't necessarily use a stand. Hall Horse is one of my favorites in this game. He has a stand, but doesn't use it for anything other than maybe like a special move here or there or a super attack. His ability really comes with his gun. I thought was very cool. He can shoot his gun, and the bullet will very temporarily stop in midair, and then you can use the controls to direct whether it goes up or down or forward or something like that. So that's very cool. So I liked Hall Horse because it's kind of like a tricky character to play as, and I found that interesting. Not a lot of fighting game characters you can find out there that play like that. You can say that for a lot of the characters in this game. Not a lot of fighting games out there that play quite like this one. Again, like I said, the basic controls, if you've played any other 2D fighters, you'll easily wrap your head around them. Here, 6-button fighter, nothing too crazy, but when you start to deep dive into the character's special attacks and abilities, and you realize each character plays very differently from the others, that's when you can start to really have a lot of fun with this game. So the gameplay is fun, unique for a 2D fighter, especially for like a Capcom fighter. Again, this was way out of left field for me when it was first released. Nothing. It was definitely not my classic Street Fighter. So the gameplay is excellent. The visual designs are obviously great. The JoJo manga, again, like I said, unique character designs. That all carries over into this game. The characters, the stages, it's just colorful. Just visually a really beautiful game. Soundtrack is really good too. So there's really nothing at all to complain about with this one. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. What a weird, wacky 2D fighter, but again, something special. Another one that if you're going to start collecting Dreamcast games, this one has to be at the top of the list. Like if I was going to say like, okay, you just started a Dreamcast collection, what are like 10 games maybe that you're going to really want in that collection? I'd put this in that top 10 just because it's such an interesting and unique game. I'd put it up there with classic stuff like, obviously, you're going to want a copy of Crazy Taxi, a copy of Jet Grind Radio, some other stuff, but get yourself a copy of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure because it's quirky, it's unique, it's fun, and it's totally awesome. It is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure for the Dreamcast. Fantastic stuff. Hey, that's it. 6 Dreamcast games. We made it, guys. We're on the other side. Yeah, been having a lot of fun with these. Great games, can't complain about a single one. Down in the comments, have you played these games? What do you think of them? And if you haven't, would you like to? Usually when I do these in the comments sections, I like to invite people to, put their wish list down there. Like, what do you like? If you're a Dreamcast collector or if you're looking at starting a Dreamcast collection, what are some games that you'd like to have to start off your collection? What are like some of the big things on your wish list? I like to hear that kind of stuff because I'm not really like a game collector anymore. Like games, like I buy lots of games. I buy tons of games. Like I think like every week probably I'm buying some more games. Sometimes a little bit, sometimes a lot, but I'm not necessarily collecting them. Like I hang on to some of them for a little while, but they come in, I play a lot of them, I test them, but then I'm packaging them up and sending them out. So I'm not necessarily a collector anymore. Actually, a large portion of my collection is gone by now. So I do like to hear from people that are still like collecting hardcore. Like, what do you want? What are the things you want to add to your collection? What are like the must-have games? Even though these games are like 20 some odd years old, still, what are the must-have games? It's as though 999 was just yesterday, and we all need to get us some Dreamcast games. Anyway, I ramble on as I am wont to do. But thanks everybody for watching. Hope you're having some fun playing some games out there today. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing as soon as I turn off this camera. That and editing this video. But there's going to be some gameplay, and that's why I'm a slow editor. A little editing, little gameplay. Little editing, little gameplay. It's a slow, meticulous process, but I get through it. I make do with what I have. So thanks everybody for watching, and I will see you on the next edition of more games. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.